Hello and welcome to the Whoniverse and to a brand new video. Now, one of the many classic villains of Doctor Who that was brought back into the revived series that doesn't get much attention is the entity known as the Great Intelligence. This formless creature manipulated people to do its bidding and possessed those it could. It was capable of controlling dead bodies, psychic snow, and robots. This was a being that was incredibly smart and manipulative, and one that could have had a great impact on the Doctor's entire life. So let's take an in-depth look at this villain, who's appeared throughout televised episodes and official books and audios. This is the history of the Great Intelligence. Firstly, let's take a more in-depth look at the identity of this entity. The second Doctor described it as a sort of formless, shapeless thing floating about in space like a cloud of mist, only with a mind and a will. This was an entity that mastered the abilities of possession and control of those with a lesser mind than its own. Now, according to the book MILLENNIAL RITES, the Great Intelligence was the lead strategist for a race known as the Great Old Ones, who were the equivalent of Gallifrey's Time Lords, but from a past universe. When the Old Ones transferred themselves into the Doctor's universe to escape, the Great Intelligence, who was called Yog-Sothoth at the time, gained godlike powers in the Doctor's universe. Now, it's unclear if the Great Intelligence originated instead on Earth in 1842, as shown in the episode The SNOWMAN. Doctor Who is full of conflicting history, with origins often getting overwritten, much like comic books. This was an entity that possessed snow that simply mimicked a child that talked to the snowman formed out of this psychic snow. Now, the snow itself featured a low-level telepathic field, causing it to respond to the thoughts and emotions of those around them. The child the snow spoke to was Walter Simeon. Now, over the course of 50 years, the Great Intelligence grew in IQ and manipulated Dr. Simeon. As an adult, Simeon established the Great Intelligence Institute. As the snow slowly swarmed to Earth in 1892, its presence was sufficient enough to consume mankind. After Simeon's mind and memories were erased from after meeting the Intelligence, the 11th Doctor was surprised to see the Intelligence itself survived. The Doctor discovered that it could survive beyond physical form, controlling the now mindless Simeon. It attacked the Doctor but was stopped at the last minutes of Christmas Eve when the snow changed to rain, mimicking the form of the tears of Captain Latimer's family after Clara Osmond Oswald's death. The Intelligence did not totally perish, and in fact, now having learnt to survive beyond physical form, it continued with the belief that the London Underground was a key strategic weakness in the London metropolitan area. After, the Doctor thought it was the Great Intelligence that matched his point in the timeline, and not before their first meeting. In the story of the Abominable Snowman, at some point in the 18th century, it possessed a Tibetan Lama, Padmasambhava, while it was travelling the astral plane, and forced him to build its robot Yetis over the next 2 centuries. According to the book The Forgotten Son, it was Padmasambhava that called it a Great Intelligence, a name that it used from that point on. Now, at the Destined monastery in 1935, the second Doctor and Edward Travers, a Westerner determined to find the Yeti, intervened with the Intelligence's plans to take the mountain the monastery stood on. The Lama, realising that it would want to cover the world of slime, the Intelligence knew the Doctor and described him as a man of great knowledge and intelligence. They destroyed the pyramids that controlled its Yetis, and Padmasambhava's physical body died as the Intelligence melted away. According to the book Millennial Rites, the Great Intelligence was now under pressure from the other Old Ones, who themselves embarked on similar campaigns and conquered other planets. The Intelligence was forced to use the Yeti in London, an environment in which they were not well suited. So, in the story The Web of Fear, set approximately 40 years after the events at the Destined monastery, the Yeti reactivated and the Intelligence manifested as webbing. It ensnared the Doctor's TARDIS in space and forced it to land in the London Underground. Reunited with Travers, the Doctor assisted British military in their battles with the Yeti. The Intelligence reanimated and possessed the corpse of Staff Sergeant Arnold, using him to track the Doctor's actions. The Intelligence captured the Doctor and tried to use a conversion headset to take over the Doctor's body. The Doctor attempted to reverse the process, allowing him to absorb the Intelligence and destroy it. When the control spheres that formed the focus of the Intelligence were smashed by Jamie McCrimmon, the Intelligence vanished. And according to the book Times Squared, in October of that same year, the Intelligence followed Lethbridge Stewart, Sally Wright and Owain Vine to New York City, where it attempted to use Yeti and infected rats to turn the population of the city into a vast computer. Aided by Edward Travers and Adrian Kramer, the three successfully repelled the invasion. The Intelligence was still around a couple years later and controlled Norma Vine. It was trapped on Earth because of his link to Toby Kinsella and Travers. It sent Norma around London to find pieces of equipment for a machine. Travers tried to communicate with it and it overtook his mind. It decided to destroy his lab, Kinsella found a door to its base through a temporal tear in Hyde Park. It didn't realise that his thoughts had been broadcast over the TV and radio. It wanted to control everyone on Earth. Creating the domain for Vine took a lot of its energy. It hoped to call the Doctor to Earth for it to free him. The combined wills of Travers and Kinsella overwrote the connection to Vine, and it fled this plane. Still bound to Earth, it vowed to try again. These events were shown in the audio story, Time of the Intelligence. Now in 1995, a company called Real Time Pictures released a straight-to-video adventure called Downtime. The BBC provided them licenses to a range of characters, but not to the Doctor or even a mention of the character. Some dispute whether or not this adventure is part of the official history or not, so I'm going to talk about it and let you decide either way. The Great Intelligence contacted the Doctor's former companion, Victoria Waterfield, and manipulated her into using computers to return to physical existence in 1995. Attempted to cover the earthen web when the generators to the New World University were destroyed. The main bulk of the intelligence faded away. In 1999, Anne Travers, who had been left traumatised by the intelligence's first attempts to enter the universe, believed millionaire Ashley Chappell would try to use a special program, the MILLENNIUM Codex, to summon the intelligence to Earth. She prepared a counterspell to force it back into its own reality. However, this had destructive effects, including dragging the intelligence back to Earth and merging it with the benevolent god Sequazal into a single malevolent being. It altered reality around London to form the Great Kingdom, around partly obeying the laws of the intelligence's universe, N-Space, and Sequazal's universe. Here, the Doctor's TARDIS was worshipped as the Lady TARDIS, and the intelligence was worshipped as the key and guardian of the gate, forming the triad of gods with Sequazal. Anne sacrificed herself to fix reality, but instead of destroying the intelligence, she banished it. The intelligence became stranded on the edge of the universe, riding the blue shift outwards into infinity. In the late 20th century, while Miss Kislet was still a young girl, the Great Intelligence began to whisper in her ear, leading her to eventually found her company by 2013. Now, the Great Intelligence had influenced Miss Kislet to establish an organisation based on the 65th floor of the Shard, which used the Wi-Fi and servants nicknamed Spoonheads to capture human minds. Great Intelligence used the internet as its web. Its operation fell apart when the 11th Doctor used a captured Spoonhead to trick Miss Kislet into being trapped in the Wi-Fi after she refused to release the uploaded Clara Oswald, who was under the Doctor's protection. The worker downloaded Clara, Kislet and others captured in the server, returning them to their bodies if they had one still to go to. When UNIT arrived at the Shard, the Great Intelligence ordered Kislet to restore their employees to their factory settings, effectively erasing everyone's memories to avoid detection. This was shown in the story The Bells of St. John. After the siege of Trenzalore, the intelligence used the Whispermen to kidnap Madame Vastra, Strax and Jenny Flint from 1893 to Trenzalore. It spoke through their conference call linked with Clara and River Song to take the Doctor from 2013 London to Trenzalore. The Whispermen brought the Paternoster gang to the Doctor's tomb on Trenzalore so the intelligence could have its ultimate revenge by turning all the Doctor's victories into defeats. It did so directly by entering the Doctor's time stream, which appeared as an open wound in reality inside the tomb. However, this plan was foiled by Clara, who followed the intelligence through the wound. Just as he was, she was ripped into countless versions of herself throughout history and saved the Doctor countless times, undoing the damage the intelligence had done to his timeline. After interfering with countless points in the Doctor's timeline, the intelligence returned to the London event, where another encounter with Clara and the second Doctor's attempt to destroy the younger intelligence severely damaged it, forcing the intelligence to leave the Doctor's time stream. Realising that Clara would be waiting at every turn to defeat it, the weakened intelligence travelled down the timeline of Alistair Lethbridge Stewart, instead intending to kill the Doctor's greatest ally when he was only a boy. The intelligence arrived in 1937 and found itself drawn instead to Alistair's brother, James, who carried the original soul, which would centuries later be reincarnated as the being who would become the Great Intelligence. This curiosity drew itself to join with James, but it then found out that it could not remove itself from its own soul. After manipulating James into killing himself, the intelligence became trapped inside Remington Manor in Cornwall. Weeks after the original London event in 1969, the intelligence used Wayne Vine, another reincarnation of the intelligence's immortal soul. A final showdown in Remington Manor between the intelligence and Lethbridge Stewart saw the intelligence finally defeated. The last trace of it permeated the ruins of Remington Manor. And that is the rather complicated history of the Great Intelligence, a formidable foe that is constantly trying to outsmart its opponents. Will we see the Great Intelligence again? Who knows, the ending for this character isn't really that clear, as he's just a soulless cloud of just consciousness. It's hard to work out where he's going to appear next. If it does, I'm sure the Doctor and their allies will be the first in line to prevent its plans. With that said, that is the end of the video. Thank you very much for watching. Let me know your favourite Great Intelligence story in the comments below, like the video if you enjoyed it, and hit the subscribe button if you want to see more. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.